Hey there. Are you ready to unlock a world of brand new scary stories tonight? Before we dive into it, I want to know, where and when are you watching this? Drop your answers in the comments below and join our community. Make sure to subscribe and smash that like button so you never miss a spine-tingling moment. You can send me your scary stories to the email in the description box. Now, get comfy, turn off the lights, and now, let's begin. This is an event that happened very recently, and it will probably be the single most terrifying experience in my entire life. I just graduated college in the Midwest and received an offer from a major bank in Charlotte, North Carolina. Thus, the most logical next step for me was to search for housing options in the Charlotte area. Just a couple days after graduation, my father and I flew to Charlotte, and we stayed in a hotel that was both near the airport and downtown Charlotte. It was an area that was in the midst of being gentrified, mixing homeless crackheads and young professionals all in one place. There were run-down stores and old ranch houses, but there was also newly built townhouses and a beautiful shopping center close by. While there were times that I felt unsafe in the area, it didn't seem like anything serious would happen other than the random harassment from the homeless that roamed the streets. The hotel was really nice, which was surprising for a building that had been there before the gentrification began. Breakfast was provided, the rooms are very clean, and the lobby had multiple places to relax or do work. While the hallways of the hotel definitely looked like they were from the back rooms, I felt safe within the confines of the building. At least I thought so. My father had to cut our 4-day trip to Charlotte short since a family emergency occurred. He allowed me to stay in the city for one more day while he took the next flight out to make it back home as soon as possible. I was completely fine with that, and for the last day, I explored the city and searched for more housing options alone. When I got back to the hotel that night, I took some time to relax, watching TV, YouTube videos, and listening to music. By 12 a.m., I was pretty exhausted, and I turned off the lights and closed the blinds, flopping down in bed with both my AirPods in. I spent the next couple minutes listening to music as I drifted to sleep. I woke up at around 3 a.m. to knocking on my door. I could only hear it because the music in my AirPods had stopped as my playlist had reached its end. I wasn't sure what was happening or what I was hearing for a couple minutes, as I was still in a stupor after waking up. I took out my AirPods, trying to make out the noise that was coming from the door. Knock, 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 knock. I thought it was room service or hotel management, probably just checking up on me since my father, who booked the room, was gone. No, it couldn't have been. Who in their right mind would check up on someone in the middle of the night? Knock, 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 knock. Maybe it was someone who was locked out of their own room and thought my room was their own. But that seemed impossible as well. There was only 3 floors in this hotel. Bang, 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 bang. The person was now slamming their fist against the door now. I was scared now, and I could only hope that the person would get tired and move on after a couple more minutes. The knocking continued with occasional banging against the door and finagling of the door handle. I was terrified now, not just because of the persistence of the person trying to get into my room, but also because I heard absolutely nothing else from the door. There was no breathing despite the heavy slamming of the door, nor was there any word spoken. If it was room service, they would have announced it so. If it was someone who mistook my room for theirs, I was expecting some sort of dialogue like, "Mom, Dad, brother, sister, honey." But I heard absolutely nothing but the incessant knocking and banging of my hotel room door. Bang, 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 bang. Knock, 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 knock. For nearly an hour, the person wouldn't stop. Now, I wasn't even sure it was a real person. Any human would have moved on by now. Any human would have spoken some words by now. Any human would have taken a breath by now. I didn't want to make my way towards the door to check on who the person was, since there was a slit under the door that could have allowed someone from one side of the door to notice that there was someone on the other side. Instead, I hid behind the bed, hoping to God that this thing wouldn't get into my room and that someone would stop it. Bang, 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 bang. Knock, 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 knock. By 4 a.m., I had reached my limit. I just wanted to go to bed. I just wanted to feel safe again. There seemed to be no end of the knocking or slamming or finagling. The person on the other side never paused, and I never had a feeling of respite where I thought they would leave or take a couple minutes to rest. I wanted it to end, and I thought calling the police would do that. However, I still didn't want to reveal the fact that I was in the room, so I texted 911 that there was someone trying to get into my room. It was almost 8 p.m., and I was sitting alone at the bus station. The bench was cold, and the air was quiet, except for the wind. My phone battery had died, and the streetlights were buzzing softly. I kept looking down the road, hoping the bus would come soon. This part of town got really empty and quiet after dark. I pulled my coat tighter around me to keep warm. I tried to stay calm and told myself everything was okay, but something about the silence made me nervous. Then, I saw someone coming from far away, just outside the light. She was walking slowly, almost like she was floating. Even from far away, I could see her face. It was smiling, but it wasn't a normal smile. It looked strange and creepy. Her eyes were wide, and she didn't blink. I looked around, but there was no one else nearby. All I could hear were her footsteps coming closer and closer. I grabbed my bag and hoped the bus would come soon. She kept walking toward me with that weird smile on her face. She was wearing old plain clothes that looked out of place. I thought about getting up and walking away, but I felt frozen. She didn't look angry, but the smile made me feel scared. She stopped just a few feet in front of me. I could smell something strange on her, like old metal. She didn't say anything. She just stared at me. I looked into her eyes, and it felt like falling into a hole. I looked away, trying not to panic, but I could still feel her stare. She didn't move or speak, just stood there smiling. I don't know how much time passed, but it felt like forever. I thought about calling someone, but my phone was still dead. I looked back at her, and she tilted her head to one side. That smile somehow got even bigger. It looked wrong. It was the way she tilted her head that scared me most. I whispered, "Do you need something?" But she said nothing. Just then, I saw the bus headlights coming toward us. I felt a huge wave of relief and jumped up quickly. I almost tripped as I rushed to get on the bus. The driver opened the door, and I got on without looking back. I didn't want to see her anymore. I just wanted to leave. But as the bus started moving, I looked out the window. She was still standing there, not moving at all. Her head tilted again, and she kept smiling at me. I kept staring at her through the foggy bus window. She didn't chase the bus or wave goodbye. She just stood there, still smiling, like she was waiting. It looked like she was staring straight into my soul. I thought she might be saying something, but no sound came. No one else on the bus seemed to notice or care. I didn't know how to explain what just happened, but I felt like she had taken something from me. Even the next day, I couldn't stop thinking about her. I changed my route to avoid that bus stop, but at one transfer station, I saw something across the street. A woman standing under a flickering streetlight. She looked just like the woman from before. Far away, but I could see the same creepy smile. She didn't move or wave, just stared, and that same cold feeling came back again. I tried to tell myself it was just someone else. Maybe I was just tired or imagining things. But deep down, I knew it was her again. She wasn't just watching. She was waiting. It felt like she had picked me for something. I started to notice strange things around me. Shadows looked darker. Reflections seemed off. And I didn't feel safe anymore. I never wait alone now. I always take crowded buses. But even in crowds, I sometimes see her face. In windows and mirrors. Even just in my mind. She doesn't speak. She never has. She only watches, always with a creepy smile. And every time she seems a little closer, like she's slowly closing in, and I don't know what she wants. Now I dream about her too. In my dreams, she walks up and stands right by me. She doesn't hurt me, she doesn't touch me. She just stands there staring, smiling. I can't move or scream in the dream. Her face is the last thing I see before I wake up. I wake up sweating, heart racing, still scared. I don't think the dreams are just dreams. I don't know who she is or why she's after me. But I feel like I'm being followed, even in the day. She's never far now. I see her more often. She's always quiet, always smiling. Sometimes I wonder if she's real at all. But the fear I feel is too strong to be fake. And I know she's coming closer, night by night. One day soon, I think she'll finally reach me. And when she does, I don't think I'll be able to leave. There won't be a bus to save me this time. There won't be people around or a driver to notice. It'll just be me and her, face to face. I try not to think about what happens then. But deep down, I know the smile won't go away. Not when she gets what she came for. And maybe I'll start smiling too. It was 5 a.m. when I stepped out for my early morning coffee break after finishing my overnight shift. The sky was just beginning to glow, pale pink and gold behind the distant trees. Birdsong filled the air, robins, sparrows, finches, each note sharp and clear in the cool dawn. I held my steaming cup tight, watching the steam drift upward before the cold air claimed it. This little hill behind the staff lot was my sanctuary. I could see the horizon stretch for miles. Every breath felt fresh, like I was filling my lungs with new energy after a long night. I closed my eyes for a moment, letting the silence settle around me, broken only by wings. No sounds of traffic, no indoor lights, just me, the birds, and the waking sky. Even though I'd only slept a few hours, this spot always made me feel awake inside. I took another slow sip, ready for 5 minutes of peace before heading back. As I walked up the last slope, something caught my eye nearly 50 meters away. In the dim half-light stood a lone figure. A man in a gray hoodie with the hood pulled up. At first, I thought he was another early worker, waiting for the lot gates to open. But he didn't move. He just stood there, shoulders still, watching me as I climbed. my heart gave a little jolt. I felt the familiar warning tingle at the back of my neck. The birds fell silent. The air seemed heavier, and even my breath felt loud in my ears. I studied his posture, tall, sturdy, hands hidden in pockets, face half in shadow. I hesitated, wondering if he'd even noticed me yet, or if he was planning something. The moment stretched. I weighed, turning back against walking toward the unknown. Morning felt suddenly unsafe, as if the sunrise had triggered something darker. When our eyes finally met, my blood ran cold. His gaze was steady, unblinking, like he'd been waiting for me all night. The birds resumed their song, but it sounded distant, unreal, as if underwater. Time slowed. I heard the gravel under my boots, the faint hum of a street lamp. I raised my free hand, palm open, as if that might stop him or warn him off. He took one step forward, and everything snapped into motion. He broke into a sprint, gray hood a blur against the glowing sky. I screamed, a high, raw sound I didn't know I could make so loud. My heart pounded like a drum, urging my legs to run faster than ever. I bolted down the hill, nearly slipping on loose dirt and rocks. Adrenaline surged through me, erasing every ache from lack of sleep. Behind me, I heard gravel crunching as he closed the gap in 2 strides. My scream echoed oddly, swallowed by the empty lot around us. I didn't look back, I couldn't, just ran toward the ER doors ahead. Every step felt both desperate and determined, like life itself hung on it. I prayed the doors would open in time, that help would be waiting inside. I reached the bottom, but my foot caught on a root and I tumbled forward. Pain shot through my left wrist as I braced my fall, then twisted my ankle. Stinging tears blurred my vision, but I forced myself up one more time. Groaning, I hobbled the last few yards toward the glass doors. They swung open before I could reach for the handle. Someone had seen me. Inside, the linoleum floor felt impossibly smooth, a sudden safety net. I collapsed against it, gasping, my coffee still warm in my hand. Behind me, I heard him slow, then stop, just at the threshold. Through the door's glass panel, I watched him pause in the lot. He looked around, as if searching for me, then turned and walked away. No chase, no shout. Just a slow disappearance into the rows of cars. I sank to the floor as staff rushed over, blankets and questions. Somehow, in those first seconds of safety, I finally let go and sobbed. Officers arrived soon after, scanning the lot with flashlights and radios. I told them what I could: hoodie, height, the quiet before the run. They promised to patrol the area more and look for his face on cameras. They wrapped my wrist and bandaged my ankle tight. I was told to rest and avoid putting weight on it for a week. Inside, I felt drained, but grateful to be alive and unharmed. Fear lingered, but relief had edged it back enough to breathe. Now I take my breaks in busy, well-lit areas only. My phone stays in my hand, keyed to call for help at once. I text a friend every time I leave work. No silent departures. I still miss that quiet hill, but safety must come first. I flinch at sudden noises and check reflections in every window. The sunrise no longer feels welcoming without a crowd around me. Trusting my gut saved me. Now I listen to it without question. I share this so others know how fast a peaceful morning can turn. I'll return to work tomorrow, coffee in hand, but I'll look twice. Danger can hide in dawn's light, but so can resilience. I survived that chase, and I carry its lesson with me. Every sunrise is both threat and promise. I choose to stay aware. This story is real. I was about 9 years old when it happened. To this day, I still don't know if it was a glitch, a time slip, or something else. But whatever it was, it stayed with me and my family ever since. I've gone over the details again and again, and nothing adds up. Every person who was with me remembers it the same exact way. It was a normal day, nothing strange or unusual leading up to it. But something happened that afternoon that none of us could explain. And no matter how much time passes, it still gives me chills. It started like any other summer day. My cousin and I, both around the same age, were playing outside. My older sister, who was around 17, decided to take us on a quick trip. She was driving, and another one of our older cousins came with us. My sister often took me along for errands or visits to the mall. We didn't plan anything out. We just tagged along without thinking. I remember feeling happy, relaxed, not a worry in the world. Just another afternoon in the late 90s, before smartphones and GPS. We were driving down the freeway when we spotted something fun. Off to the side was a full carnival, Ferris wheel, rides, games. One ride stood out clearly, the Zipper, with its spinning metal cages. We could see lights, bright colors, even hear distant music and shouting. My cousin and I immediately started begging to go. The smell of elephant ears and corn dogs drifted through the car windows. My sister smiled but said no, she had to return a shirt first. She promised we could stop by the carnival afterward. She took the same exit as usual, one we knew well. It curved off the freeway, leading to a familiar main road. I clearly remember the carnival being off to the left side. But my sister turned right toward the mall, just like she planned. She said she knew exactly where to park to avoid traffic. We laughed and agreed to be quick so we could return to the fun. Even walking into the mall, I could still faintly smell the carnival food. Everything felt completely normal. Nothing strange at all. We were inside for maybe 30 minutes, no more. My sister returned her shirt, and our cousin checked out a shoe sale. We didn't buy anything else, didn't waste time or wander. On the way back to the car, my cousin and I were so excited. We couldn't wait to ride the Ferris wheel or try the games. But something was off. I noticed the carnival smell was gone. I didn't mention it, thinking maybe I was just too excited to notice. We got into the Jeep and headed back toward the exit. But when we turned onto the same road, there was nothing. The entire carnival had vanished. Completely. No rides, no flashing lights, no music, no crowds, no traffic cones, no fences, no signs of teardown or trucks. It was just an empty road with trees and grass on either side. Not even a scrap of trash or leftover wire. We all sat in silence, staring out the windows, confused. The road was clear in both directions. No hint of what we saw earlier. I remember my older cousin breaking the silence. Did they press a button and hide the whole carnival underground? Nobody laughed. It wasn't funny. It felt eerie. We all knew what we had seen. We knew it had been real. My sister, quietly, turned on her signal and headed home. We didn't talk much the rest of the ride. I kept glancing out the window, hoping to see something, anything. But there was only road, sky, and the hum of the engine. Even now, thinking back, it makes no sense. And there's no way a carnival could disappear in just 30 minutes. Those rides are massive, especially the Ferris wheel and the Zipper. Taking them down would take hours, not minutes. There was no cleanup crew, no equipment, no trucks or trailers, no smell of food, no crowds, no sounds. Just silence and a road that didn't match what we remembered. It felt like something had reset, like the carnival had never been there. We've all talked about it many times over the years. No one remembers it differently. Every detail still matches. We saw the same rides, heard the same sounds, smelled the same food, and we all saw the exact same emptiness on the way back. No one's tried to explain it with logic anymore. We just accept that it was weird, and that it really happened. It's the one story that always makes people stop and think. Because it wasn't a dream, it was real, and we all remember it. I sometimes wonder what would have happened if we had gone left. What would we have found if we actually reached the carnival? Would it still have been there? Or would it have disappeared anyway? Was it real at all? Or did we see something we weren't meant to? Did we glimpse something from another time or version of reality? These thoughts always bring more questions than answers, but they also remind me how strange the world can be, and how quickly something real can just vanish into nothing. This story takes place back in 2001, during my college years. I went to school in a big city, and I had a close group of 9 friends. We were inseparable, studying, riding motorcycles, hanging out daily. Those were some of the best years of my life. We laughed a lot, pulled all-nighters, and lived in the moment. Among us was my first love, so everything felt even more memorable. One weekend in our junior year, we planned a guys-only retreat. It was supposed to be a relaxing breakout in the countryside. One of our buddies had a family farm about 2 hours away. His dad owned over 200 acres of land, fields, woods, and chicken coops. There was a large farmhouse with a pool, and we were all excited. We packed our backpacks, loaded up on snacks, and rode out together. All 9 of us were on motorcycles, cruising into open country roads. That first night, we lit a campfire, grilled food, told stories, and relaxed. The second day was more of the same: music, laughter, and good food. It felt like the perfect weekend until everything changed. Around 11 p.m. on Saturday, my friend's dad called the farmhouse. He'd just received word that a relative had passed away in a nearby town. It was another 2 hours deeper into the countryside, more rural than the farm. His dad asked if we could ride there to check on the widow. She was alone. Without hesitation, we agreed. It felt like the right thing to do. We suited up, got back on our bikes, and hit the road around 11:30 p.m. The roads were quiet, barely any lights, just the sound of our engines. A few stretches were paved, but most were winding dirt roads. We'd been riding for almost 2 hours with no one in sight. No signs, no buildings, just trees and dark sky above us. Without smartphones or GPS, we were using a printed map. We pulled over, trying to figure out the directions. It was now close to 2 a.m., and the air felt still, almost too still. Finally, in the distance, we saw a pair of headlights approaching. We flagged the car down and explained we were lost. The driver said he was from the same town and offered to guide us. As we prepared to follow him, he gave us an odd warning. "If any of you smoke, light a cigarette when we hit the dirt road," he said. I asked him why. His answer chilled me. "So the witches don't snatch you." We all kind of laughed it off, assuming he was joking. But something about the way he said it didn't sit right. We shrugged it off and followed him into the forested path. The road narrowed, with the woods on both sides dark and bare. Strangely, even in summer, the trees had no leaves, just dry branches. As soon as we entered the woods, the man rolled down his window. He lit a cigarette and drove on in silence. The rest of us followed. The deeper we went, the heavier the atmosphere felt. It wasn't just dark, it was quiet in a way that felt unnatural. No insects, no night animals, just the rumble of our bikes. That's when I started feeling a strange tension in my chest. I rode up beside a friend who smoked and asked him to light one. He laughed, but didn't, so I stopped, lit one myself, and kept going. My helmet was off, smoke curling from the cigarette in my hand. Then it happened. A laugh. Not a normal laugh. Something chilling. It echoed through the woods, high-pitched and drawn out. I looked at the friends riding closest to me and asked if they heard it too. They nodded, faces pale, no words spoken. That laugh didn't come just once. We heard it again and again. It sounded like it came from high above us in the trees, 5 times. That same eerie cackle. We didn't know what to think. Eventually, after what felt like forever, but was only 15 minutes, we saw the faint outline of a small house up ahead. We parked quietly, still shaken, and thanked the man in the car. He gave us a nod and drove off into the night, no questions asked. The house was dimly lit, but the widow answered the door right away. She was clearly grieving and overwhelmed, and we stayed to help. We didn't speak about what happened in the woods, not yet. We stayed through the next day, cleaning, fixing things, and supporting her. By late afternoon, we said our goodbyes and rode back to the farm. This time, we took a different route. No one wanted to go through the woods. There was an unspoken agreement among us not to bring it up. But once we got back to the city, that silence broke. Each of us remembered the laugh exactly the same way. 9 people, 9 separate bikes, 1 shared experience. Whatever that was, it wasn't a trick of the mind. We all heard it, and we all remember it. A few days later, I asked my friend's dad about the woods. He paused, and then told me an old story from local folklore. They say a witch haunts those woods, drawn to lone travelers at night. She doesn't like fire, which is why locals smoke when passing through. He admitted he always thought it was just a rural myth. We never told him what we'd heard. It didn't feel necessary. But deep down, we knew the truth. That the man in the car was right. And that some stories exist for a reason. I remember it so vividly, like a scene etched permanently into my mind. Too sharp and too real to ever be called a dream. I was 12 years old, and we had just moved into a quiet, rural town in Missouri. The kind of place where the nights are too still, and the air carries a certain weight. There were no city sounds to drown out your thoughts. Just the wind whispering through the trees and the occasional creak of old wood settling, like the house itself was trying to speak. Our new home was a modest 2-story farmhouse that had stood for decades before we arrived. It sat at the end of a gravel road, nestled between overgrown fields and a thin forest that pressed against the backyard like a silent audience. It was the kind of house that held secrets in its walls. Secrets no one bothered to tell us when we signed the papers. My room was upstairs, tucked away in a quiet corner of the house. It was small and mostly empty, save for a twin bed pushed against one wall, a nightstand with a glowing red digital alarm clock, and a bare bookshelf standing across the room like a silent witness. The wallpaper was faded. The floorboards groaned under even the lightest step, and there was a draft that always found its way in no matter how tightly I shut the window. It was winter. The nights were brutally cold, and the mornings darker than they should have been. I remember it was a school night, actually more like a school morning, because I had woken up randomly at exactly 5:23 a.m., a couple hours before my alarm was set to ring. That in itself was strange. I was a heavy sleeper. Once I was out until the alarm buzzed or my mom pulled the covers off. But that morning, something pulled me out of sleep like a hook behind my navel. I woke up instantly, unnaturally alert, staring at the glowing red numbers on my alarm clock. I didn't move at first. I just laid there, blinking at the numbers, trying to figure out why I was awake. Then I felt it, that chill up my spine, the kind that makes your skin prickle and your heart beat just a little too loud. It wasn't the cold, it was something else. That ancient animal part of my brain was telling me, "You're not alone?" I slowly turned my head toward the foot of the bed, my body frozen halfway between dream and waking fear. That's when I saw what I thought was my little brother Xander, standing silently at the end of my bed. He was only 7 at the time, and sometimes he'd wander into my room at night after a nightmare, so at first I was just annoyed. "Xander," I hissed groggily. "What are you doing in my room? Get out!" No response. I sat up a little straighter, my annoyance shifting into unease. "Xander," I said again, this time more sternly. Still nothing. Instead, the figure took a few slow, deliberate steps toward me. I leaned in, trying to see his face in the dim moonlight leaking through the window. That's when I realized this wasn't Xander. My blood ran cold. The figure leaned in much further than I had, inches from my face now, and I could see it clearly. It was a child, but not my brother. Its skin was pale, almost unnaturally white, without any hair, no clothes, no facial features at all. Just a smooth blank skin where its face should have been. It was the most horrifying thing I've ever seen. I screamed, a raw, terrified sound that tore out of me before I even realized I was making it. The scream startled it, sent it flying backward across the room. It knocked my alarm clock off the nightstand with a crash as it stumbled. Then it did something even more disturbing. It began crawling backward on all fours, spider-like, retreating into the far corner where my empty bookshelf stood. It curled into itself there, folding its long limbs and burying its faceless head into its knees. That's when my mom burst in and flipped on the light. And just like that, it was gone. The room was empty except for me, shaking and sobbing in my bed, and the alarm clock lying face down halfway across the room. I tried to explain what I'd seen, told her again and again that I was awake, not dreaming. But she insisted I must have had a nightmare. Still, she let me sleep in her room that night. I didn't set foot in mine for 2 weeks afterward, and even then, it took everything in me to do it. I never saw it again, but that didn't mean the house was done with us. Over the years, we heard things, cups sliding across the kitchen counters, the sound of bells jingling when there were none in the house, whispers and giggles of children when no one else was home. Now, I'm 23, and I still think about that night. I try not to look too long into dark corners, because some part of me still expects to see that pale, faceless child watching me. I've come to believe it was probably just a spirit, a child, maybe, who didn't know it had passed, or didn't know what to do with its sadness. and in a strange way I feel sorry for it. Recently, I asked my mom about that night again. She paused, looked at me for a long moment, and then admitted that she had believed me back then. She was just scared, terrified even, but didn't want to validate my fear and make it worse. She did what moms do. She protected me, even if it meant pretending. But I know what I saw, and I don't think I'll ever forget it. This story happened just a few years ago, somewhere between 2019 and 2022. It's still fairly recent, yet the memory feels like a dream I'm constantly trying to piece together. Even now, the details are a bit fuzzy, but I'll do my best to explain what happened, as accurately and clearly as I can. I grew up in this old apartment building, a place I called home for most of my life. From as far back as I can remember, I lived there. It wasn't one of those modern high-rise towers, just an aging building with a lot of history, character, and secrets. Every few years, we'd switch floors, sometimes due to maintenance, sometimes due to space, and sometimes just to get a better view or quieter neighbors. Eventually, we moved to the 5th floor, and that's when things started to feel different. Life on the 5th floor was mostly normal at first. I got to know a few of the neighbors, some friendly, some quiet, some just going about their day like everyone else. But there was one neighbor I never got to know. He lived about 3 doors down from our unit, and unlike everyone else, he kept entirely to himself. I mean, completely. No greetings, no conversations, no comings or goings that I can remember. It was like he didn't exist, and yet, I knew he was there. From what I'd heard through the usual neighborhood gossip, he might have been Albanian or possibly Middle Eastern. That's about all anyone really knew. He didn't cause trouble, didn't make noise, didn't socialize. Just silence. You'd think living that close to someone, you'd run into them once in a while. At the elevator, in the hallway, grabbing mail, but no, not once. To give you a better idea of the setting, the area I lived in wasn't particularly diverse. It was made up mostly of Hispanic and Albanian communities, with a strong presence of families who had lived there for years. Unfortunately, the neighborhood was also known for its connection to street activity. You could sense it in the air sometimes, the tension, the caution, the need to always be aware of your surroundings. Some corners were quiet, others not so much. I remember one evening going out to grab a pizza from a local spot just a block away. On the way there, I passed a group of guys, mostly young, rough around the edges, who gave off a certain energy. They were gathered outside, messing around with things they shouldn't have been, like stun devices, loud music, and stuff that clearly wasn't part of just hanging out. I saw this kind of stuff a lot, especially in the local corner stores. Most of the time, the stores were nearly empty, just a few regular customers here and there, but always a few of those same guys, either chatting with the store clerks like they owned the place, or keeping an eye on who came in and out. It's hard to explain, but if you lived there, you just knew who was who. That background might seem unrelated, but trust me, it ties into what happened next. One night, everything changed. It was a pretty regular evening. My family was relaxing in the living room, watching TV. I was supposed to take out the trash. Nothing unusual. I remember looking for the bag my mom had asked me to grab when suddenly we started hearing loud sirens. Not just a few, a lot. Ambulances, police vehicles. We rushed to the balcony, which gave us a clear view of what was happening outside the building. here's where the timeline gets a little unclear, but I'll do my best to explain it the way I remember. While the sirens were going off and people were starting to gather near the scene, someone, wounded, from what I could tell, entered our building. Somehow, they made it to the elevator, and from what I later heard, they went up to the 5th floor. Specifically, to that same mysterious neighbor's apartment. The guy no one ever saw, the private, quiet one. At that moment, I didn't even realize it was his place, but it didn't take long to figure out. Shortly after, police officers arrived on our floor. They started knocking on his door, loud, aggressive knocks that echoed down the hallway. Then, after a few moments, they let themselves in. And from there, nothing. Silence. No updates, no official word, just more questions. The only thing we really noticed was that for the next week, an officer stood by his door. Every single morning on my way to school, I'd pass by and see the same officer, quietly stationed outside the unit. Sometimes he'd be gone by the evening, but he was always back the next morning. It was like something serious had happened, but no one was talking about it. And eventually, just like that, the officer disappeared, and so did the neighbor. Later, my mom noticed something chilling. Traces of blood in the elevator, faint, but definitely there. She pointed it out during one of her quiet investigations when the building had finally calmed down. To this day, we never found out what happened. No word from building management. No article in the paper, no signs that he ever came back. It was like the building swallowed the whole incident and moved on. But I've had time to think, maybe too much time. And I have a theory. Given everything, the area we lived in, the people we'd see outside the stores, the constant background of tension, it's possible he was involved in something deeper. Maybe he was connected to some group or activity and something went wrong. Maybe someone tried to hurt him, and he barely made it back to his apartment. Maybe someone else called for help once they saw what happened. Or maybe it was all even more complex than that. I don't know, and honestly, I probably never will. But I still think about him. The neighbor I never saw, the silence behind that door, the officer who stood watch, the blood in the elevator. Sometimes, the quietest people hide the loudest stories. What do you think happened? I live in Kuwait, but whenever I get a winter break, I usually travel to Pakistan to spend time with my extended family. My roots are in a village called Saidpur, nestled in the serene outskirts of Islamabad. It's a peaceful place, surrounded by nature and filled with memories of childhood and close-knit family moments. During one of these visits, we decided to take a trip to Kashmir, a place so breathtaking that I honestly believe it's among the most beautiful regions in the world. Snow-capped peaks, endless valleys, fresh rivers. Just Google it, and you'll understand what I mean. So, we packed up for a 3-day trip. Because of the number of people and luggage, we had to use 2 vehicles. I ended up driving my uncle's larger car since it had the space for all our suitcases. That meant I was alone in the car, while everyone else rode in the other one. I laughed it off, joking about being abandoned, but deep down, I was nervous about driving alone, especially at night through the mountains. As evening fell, we had already covered a lot of ground and reached an area near Baral Fort, a historic spot that signaled we were getting close. Only 2 of us were awake and alert enough to drive, myself and the other car's driver. We were both experienced, so it made sense. Now, here's where things got strange. This is the part I still think about to this day. We entered a region that was pure wilderness. Massive mountain walls on one side, and a drop into a dense, dark forest on the other. The road curved and climbed through silence. There were no street lights, no other cars, no towns nearby, just our headlights and the sounds of the night. If you've been to remote parts of Pakistan, you know how eerie nature can get there. The sounds of crickets, distant birds, and sometimes unsettling bird calls that echo through the night, they're part of the background. But that night, everything felt off. At some point, I got distracted, trying to listen to what I thought was whispering coming from the trees. It sounded too human to be just nature. In doing so, I lost sight of the other car ahead of me. I honked, but got no response. They were probably blasting music and didn't hear. I called them, and they told me to just keep going. They'd stop ahead and wait. I picked up the pace, eyes glued to the road. That's when I saw something, or rather, someone, just off the side of the road. A girl, probably around 19, crouched near the forest's edge. Her clothes were tattered, dirty, and she looked disoriented. At first, I wasn't even sure if it was a person. It could have been a trash bag, or just shadows playing tricks on me. But I slowed down and cracked my window just slightly. "Aap idhar kya kar rahi hain?" I asked. "What are you doing here?" In Urdu. She responded in a trembling voice. "Chhod do mujhe, maaf karo. Leave me alone, please forgive me." My stomach dropped. Something was very wrong. I took a deep breath and asked if she needed help. She hesitated, then softly said yes. When I asked what happened, she told me something that shook me to the core. She claimed she had been taken from her town 3 days ago by 2 men who threatened her and her family. She had been hiding in the forest ever since, trying to escape. Her traditional clothing was torn, especially from the back, and she had visible injuries, scratches, bruises, and hand imprints on her arms. At that moment, I faced a dilemma. She needed help, but I didn't know if I was walking into a trap. These kinds of stories, where people use someone vulnerable looking to lure others out, aren't unheard of. So I took precautions. I asked to see her shoes and hands to make sure she wasn't hiding anything dangerous. To make sure no one else was hiding nearby, I told her to follow my car on foot for a bit. If anyone else came running out of the forest, I'd hear it in the silence. She limped behind me, crying, begging me to stop. I still drove a while longer until I was confident no one else was chasing. Eventually, I stopped and let her in. She sat quietly, shivering. I told her I was looking for my family, and a few minutes later, reunited with the other car. We kept her calm and safe until we reached a checkpost. There, we handed her over to local authorities, possibly military or police, who assured us they'd help her. To this day, I wonder what happened to her. If she was okay, if she found her way back home, if justice was ever served, I don't know. What I'm about to share happened about 8 years ago, and to this day I still can't explain it. I've told this story only a few times, but recently I've been wondering if anyone else out there has gone through something similar. This is 100% true. Back then, I had a very intense falling out with my aunt. We argued about something very serious. She had relapsed, and I confronted her about it. The conversation didn't end well. She left the house, and later that night, she passed away. We got the news the following morning. That entire morning felt off. It was like everything around me was heavier, more silent. Our family cat, who never goes outside, somehow managed to sneak out and came back in with a black crow in its mouth. The crow was still alive, flapping and shrieking. It felt like some kind of bad sign, and that was just the beginning. That night I went to sleep, and the dreams started. But these weren't like regular dreams. They felt more like a parallel reality, the kind of thing where you wake up with your heart pounding, your sheets soaked in sweat, and your hands shaking like you lived it, not dreamed it. I found myself stuck in the living room of our house. I couldn't move, completely frozen, but I could look around. Everything was exactly like it is in real life. Out of nowhere, I heard the sound of metal dragging across concrete, and a woman crying outside. The sound came closer and closer. I looked into the mirror hanging in the living room and saw myself, motionless, scared, but watching. I felt this overwhelming presence behind me, heavy, cold, unseen. I walked toward the front door, following the cries. That's when I saw her, a woman in chains, being pulled along by something I couldn't fully see. She was crying, screaming. I couldn't open the door, but I recognized her voice now. I tried calling out to her, but no sound came out of my mouth. I could walk freely again. I could see and hear everything more clearly, even feel the cold from outside. I tried to open the door, but the handle felt hot, burning even. I finally opened the door. What I saw standing there has haunted me ever since. It was tall, on two legs, but not human. Its face looked vaguely like a goat, but twisted. Its eyes were a glowing yellow-orange, and it wore something that looked torn and ancient. It didn't move, just stared at me, and that look, it froze me in fear. I woke up, drenched in sweat, gasping. By now, I was dreading going to sleep, but I had to know more. The next night, the dream showed me the woman more clearly. It was my aunt. Her voice, her face. She was crying, begging not to be taken back somewhere she kept calling that place. A street in the city where she struggled the most. She kept screaming, "I don't want to go back. I'm stuck." She begged me to help her. I finally stepped outside the door to help, but the creature turned, let out a sound so loud and sharp, it felt like my ears were bleeding. It didn't speak English, just a guttural, ancient-sounding language I couldn't understand. As it dragged her away, I could hear her begging. The whole street seemed to shift into a shadowy, twisted version of her past. Every time I woke up from those dreams, I felt like I had been somewhere. I wasn't just waking up from sleep, I was coming back from a place that shouldn't exist. The tears were real, the fear was real, the sweat, the anxiety, all of it. I wasn't someone who believed much in the spiritual before this, but my grandparents were deeply religious. They took it seriously. Each night after that, we prayed. We spoke her name in hope. We asked for peace. And slowly, the dreams stopped, but they never faded. I'm not trying to scare anyone. I'm not looking for attention. I just want to know if anyone out there has experienced anything like this. Dreams that feel too real. Voices of people you've lost calling out for help. A sense that something is unfinished, even after death. Some people told me it was grief. Others said it was something darker that was connected to what happened. I still don't know. All I know is I didn't imagine it. So, if you've had something like this happen, maybe you're not alone.